news podcast worth listening to. Start here, free on Apple Podcasts.
Outrage in Minneapolis. Protesters demanding answers after the death of a black man in police custody. The video of an officer kneeling on George Floyd's neck until he's unresponsive. And the new video obtained by ABC News moments before Floyd's arrest. We talk live with the mayor of Minneapolis, as well as the chair of the National Black Police Association. 100,000 lives lost. The death toll from COVID-19 here in the U.S. in just a matter of months. The latest on the fight against the virus and the promising news of when we might be able to expect a vaccine. President Trump's latest Twitter feud with Twitter itself, threatening to shut down the social media platform after Twitter fact-checked the president. But can he do that? We got the answer. Fighting cancer during a pandemic. Many treatments put on the back burner to deal with COVID-19. We're taking a look at some of the difficult decisions facing cancer patients right now. And Scrubbed launch, the historic moment that wasn't, at least not yet. The two astronauts' trip to the International Space Station now on hold for a few more days. Good evening, everyone. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. It was September of 2016. Colin Kaepernick started taking a knee on NFL sidelines to protest police brutality against people of color. That same year, according to a group called Mapping Police Violence, 1,071 people were killed by police. 4 years later, that number has increased. One of the latest victims, George Floyd, who died after a white Minneapolis police officer pressed his knee into his neck for 5 minutes. Protesters are now doing more than taking a knee. They are taking to the streets of Minneapolis, outraged for the second day, demanding action. And so is the mayor, while others pay their respects at the growing memorial. Alex Perez leads us off with the latest on the investigation and new video leading up to Floyd's final moments.
Please, please, I can't breathe. Please, man. Please, man.
Tonight, as the world reacts in disbelief to this horrific video of a white officer digging his knee into the neck of George Floyd until he lost consciousness and later died, the mayor of Minneapolis is calling for that officer's arrest.
If you had done it, or I had done it, we would be behind bars right now.
President Trump addressing it today.
A very sad event. Very, very sad event.
Asked if the officers should be prosecuted.
Well, we're going to look at it, and we're going to get a report tomorrow when we get back. And we're going to get a very full report, but a very sad day.
Former Vice President Biden weighing in too.
George Floyd's life mattered. It mattered as much as mine. It mattered as much as anyone's in this country.
The officer with his knee on Floyd's neck is said to be 44-year-old Derek Chauvin, a Minneapolis police force veteran who reportedly was among several officers investigated after a fatal shooting in 2006. A grand jury later declined to indict.
You think that's okay? Check it.
Another officer seen in the video holding back the growing crowd, identified as Toe Tao. The police chief swiftly fired them and two other responding officers, Thomas Lane and J. Alexander Kung. But that quick action did not stop hundreds of protesters from taking to the streets overnight. The demonstration starting peacefully but turning violent.
I can't move.
I've been waiting the whole
The video was recorded Monday night after police say they got a call from a convenience store about a forgery in progress. Floyd on the ground, handcuffed, begging for air.
You can't win, man.
I'm through.
I know you're a nigga.
He was taken away by EMTs. A fire department report says when they met up with those EMTs on the way to the hospital, medics performed pulse checks several times, finding none. New surveillance video obtained by ABC News shows the moments before when officers approach and arrest Floyd, who is sitting in an SUV. Floyd's sister Bridget telling Michael Strahan on GMA she can't bring herself to watch video of the incident.
They murdered my brother. They killed him. They don't need to walk the streets.
Originally from Houston, Floyd played football in high school. Loved ones called him a gentle giant.
He used the power of God to really lift people up in this world, and I miss that already.
And for the last 5 years, he worked as a security guard at Giovanni Thunstrom's restaurant here.
Everybody loves him. All my customers, my employees.
And tonight, many juxtaposing the image of the officer kneeling on Floyd to the image of Colin Kaepernick kneeling during the national anthem to protest police brutality. LeBron James posting the images side by side, writing, "Do you understand now?"
All right, and let's bring in Alex Perez. Alex, what are you hearing from people on the streets in protest?
Well, Lindsay, you talked to people here tonight, last night. They all seem to say the same thing. They are sick and tired of being sick and tired. This is not the first time something like this has occurred, and they want to see it end. They want to see Black Americans treated equally and with respect. And I'll tell you, you look at the crowd here, and it's not just Black Americans. There's a mix of people here, all shades of color, and all really fighting for the same thing, equality.
And as you report, the Minneapolis mayor has called for criminal charges. Have the local prosecutors responded to that?
Yeah, Lindsay, we did hear from the local prosecutor's office. They did not say very much, but the local prosecutor's office simply said that they are reviewing the evidence in this case and that they are working on it expeditiously. Lindsay?
All right, Alex Perez, thank you so much. And now we'll bring in Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey. Thank you so much for joining us, Mayor.
Thank you so much for having me.
So you're now calling for an arrest and criminal charges. Do you have an answer to the question that you posed today? Why is the man who killed George Floyd not in jail at this time?
Well, I don't. And that's largely what I've wrestled with over the last 36 hours or so is, what we witnessed on that video was hard. We witnessed a white officer have their knee on a Black man for a full 5 minutes. For a full 5 minutes while he called out for help, while community said, please stop. And the notion that you or I would have been put in jail upon doing something like that, and he was not, it's just wrong. It needs to be addressed.
It's extremely rare for a mayor to call on the prosecution of one of his own police officers. What about this case compelled you to take this position? And did you have any hesitation with that?
In City Hall, there is precedent and protocol that is literally baked into the walls, that is baked into the mortar, that says that you shouldn't act quickly, that you shouldn't speak out, that you should hold off and wait a second. But here's the thing, at a certain point, we need to speak on behalf of our communities. We need to speak on behalf of Black residents who have seen this happen over and over and over again. Being Black in America, being Black in Minnesota should not be a death sentence. And so it's, yes, about this particular incident. It's also about the last 400 years.
There is new video of George Floyd being handcuffed before he was pinned down. From what you've seen, do you believe that his anything that he could have done prior to that arrest, whether he resisted arrest, was there anything of his own actions that could justify the actions of that officer?
Well, let's look at the circumstances in the video that we have all seen. You had a man, George Floyd, that was on the ground, that was handcuffed. As far as I could tell, was not even resisting. And he was articulating a need to be safe. And that is something that is so fundamental when someone is calling out for help. When someone is in need of that basic assistance, you help them, especially if you're a police officer where you have a responsibility and a duty to protect and serve. That duty, that responsibility was failed at the most basic human sense.
You've said that the restraint, if we can even call it that, of George Floyd was not authorized by your police department. What kind of arrest would have been appropriate in a situation like this one?
Well, I can't speak to all of the different facets of this particular arrest, and so I can't speak to what sort of arrest would have been appropriate. What I can say is what happened was wrong. The technique that was used of pressing the knee into an individual's neck is not an authorized technique. It is nothing that that officers are trained in on. It stands against everything that myself and Chief Arredondo have been pushing for in our Minneapolis Police Department for fair and compassionate treatment and procedural justice. And, you know, another big difference is in so many of these cases that we've seen throughout the nation over the last several years, we're talking about a split-second decision. We're talking about a matter of 4, 5, 10 seconds in total. This was not a split-second decision. This was 5 minutes, 300 seconds at least, where in any one of those seconds, the officer could have made a different decision. And so, in that sense, George Floyd deserves justice. The black community deserves justice. His friends, his family deserves justice. It's the right thing for the city of Minneapolis. We need to make sure that the officer is charged. It's the right thing to do.
You have said, and said it again just tonight, that being black should not be a death sentence. Do you have any indication at this point that this was a hate crime or that race in any way came into play?
I obviously don't know what was going through the mind of the particular officer involved. What I can say is that we know that implicit bias exists. It exists in all of us, including me. We also know that explicit bias has been very clear in so many instances involving law enforcement and through our history. And so to that extent, this is not just about the last 5 minutes, as I've said, it's about 400 years. And, you know, like, this needs to stop. And so I recognize that my statement, I recognize that the immediate termination, I recognize that the call for a charge has been a deviation from the norm. But perhaps it's been long overdue.
And how at this point do you plan to help heal the Minneapolis community? And what do you think can be done on a national level to address the pain of this moment?
There have been many people that have asked me about how to go about healing. But to get to a point of healing, we first need to stop the bleeding. We need to stop this ongoing trauma. And that begins with a charge here. Obviously, there is a lot of work left to do in the Minneapolis Police Department here and police departments around the country in a culture shift. That needs to happen. We know it, and we're up to the task. But, you know, I think right now is largely about honesty. It's about acknowledging what happened, and then it's about acting, knowing what happened.
In order to start the healing, we have to first stop the bleeding. Mayor, we thank you so much for your time and being a part of the show tonight.
Thank you for having me.
And joining us now, the chair of the National Black Police Association, Sonia Pruitt. Sonia, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
So your organization is dedicated to, quote, promoting justice, fairness, and effectiveness in law enforcement. We just heard from the mayor of Minneapolis. He wants the officer who knelt on George Floyd's neck to be arrested and charged. Do you agree with him?
Absolutely.
The National Black Police Association represents 80,000 black officers in the U.S., Canada, and the United Kingdom. What advice are you giving your officers at this point, and what do you think can be done to bridge the trust gap in communities after an incident like this?
If you're speaking in terms of how do we navigate this, well, we're not, this is not new for us. We have been speaking out against these kinds of atrocities and abuses and trauma since 1972 as an organization. But any black police officer can tell you that working as an officer on the inside of a police department is much different than what citizens might see on the outside. So we have to deal with the duality of being black, as well as making sure that we enforce the Constitution and the law in a fair and equitable manner.
Right, black. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
And the way to heal this gap is by doing just that. You know, everybody deserves to be treated with humanity and dignity and respect. And in the case of Mr. Floyd, none of that happened.
Black and blue at the same time is something you just kind of addressed there. In your organization's statement on George Floyd's death, you say, quote, "Let's speak truths. In America, it's clear that the humanity of black people appears invisible to law enforcement." And that's a rather bold statement. Why did you feel that it was necessary to come out so forcefully?
Listen, this has been happening for far too long, far too much. And, you know, it's funny because although Mr. Floyd's death is a tragedy, it highlights what I call the lying eyes, that you can actually see this happen in front of you. Is almost unbelievable, but there is going to be a faction of the population, and especially law enforcement, that's going to try to kind of either minimize it or say we didn't see what we saw. And so when I talk about Black people being transparent, I love what the mayor says about 400 years of this trauma. We've been invisible since our ancestors were brought to these shores by force. And so the system of law enforcement was created to keep us in place. And I always say that Black officers really, the career path of being a law enforcement officer was not made for us, but we're really perfect at it because we live in so many different worlds. We can navigate wherever we go because of our experiences. And so we are a necessary part of police forces. And so we can explain to you and to people who are curious what it's like for us to be that duality.
And lastly, you know, we seem to have this conversation way too often. And each time we seem to ask the same questions. Will this be the turning point? Will it get better? What definitive action do you think that elected leaders should be taking? And are some of the things that we're seeing, like chokeholds and knees pressed down against necks, are these things that are actually taught in police academies?
Listen, I think that our police academies generally, and this is really kind of anecdotally because I don't know what every police academy does, but I think generally that police academies teach the right things. Training goes only as far as the person who's being trained wants to receive it, just like policy. So despite, I'm sure, the officer knowing that pressing down on someone's neck could cause injury, he continued to do it for 5 minutes. That's a long time. And how do you untrain somebody to have that thought process? I would like to know what was going through his mind as this person gasped for air, said that he could not breathe, and was afraid that he was going to be killed and screaming for his mother. So training is only as useful as if you really, really invested in it and that you know why and that you're willing to carry forth the mission with your training and using the policy that you've been taught.
Sonia Pruitt, Chair of the National Black Police Association, we thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
Today, the U.S. hit the grimmest of milestones. It is certainly easy to become numb to the numbers, numb to the number of confirmed cases and the rising death toll. But this number, it should give us all pause. 100,000. That is the death toll in this country from COVID-19. Any one of us can become victims, or we can be one that leads to someone else's sickness or possibly even death. The fight against this virus is certainly not over, and our Eva Pilgrim takes a look at the scope of this national tragedy.
In just 3 months, unimaginable loss across the country, from a nursing home in Washington state to overwhelmed emergency rooms in New York. 100,000 American lives lost to the coronavirus. The president traveling to Florida so far today, not addressing that milestone. But his rival, Joe Biden, did send out this video message.
There are moments in our history so grim, so heartrending, that they're forever fixed in each of our hearts. A shared grief. Today is one of those moments.
But as the toll grows daily, states now scrambling to jumpstart their economies with a patchwork of precautions.
We are moving forward. Let us not forget the most vulnerable amongst us.
California, one of 14 states where cases are still rising. The state marking 100,000 infections. But today, in most counties, salons reopening with temperature checks, gloves, and masks.
It's not burden at all. I mean, you're trying to be safe. for everybody. So there's no problem.
This demonstration showing in green how droplets of saliva are reduced when wearing a mask.
Stay healthy.
Without the mask,
stay healthy.
The mayor of Washington, D.C. urging residents to wear masks as it lifts its stay-at-home order Friday.
We know without a vaccine or a cure that we will see new infections.
Dr. Anthony Fauci today saying he is optimistic about a vaccine.
I still think that we have a good chance, if all the things fall in the right place, that we might have a vaccine that would be deployable by the end of the year.
And Eva Pilgrim joins us now with more. Eva, like many of us here at ABC News, you've been covering the tragedy of COVID-19 each day. As you think about that milestone, 100,000 lives lost, what sticks out for you the most based on your conversations that you've had with people impacted by this virus?
I think, Lindsay, you can't forget that each person, 100,000, each of those are lives. Those are mothers and fathers, brothers, sisters. They all had jobs. And this virus touched people across socioeconomic classes. It didn't matter what part of the country that you lived in, what neighborhood that you came from. You were not immune to this virus, and there was nothing that you could do to really protect yourself from it other than to social distance and to follow these precautions. We were all in the same boat, and everyone was talking about this, Lindsay.
All right, Eva Pilgrim, thanks so much. Hurricane season has not officially started yet, but already we have our second storm of the year. Tropical Storm Bertha made landfall close to Charleston earlier this morning, bringing wind and heavy rain. And that rain is the big thing to watch, with parts of South Carolina, North Carolina, and Virginia all under flash flood watches for the next 24 hours. And bad weather in Florida means history will have to wait at least a couple more days. Today's historic launch between NASA and SpaceX has been delayed because of storms in the area. The next attempt will be Saturday afternoon, when things will hopefully look a bit clearer. Gio Benitez joins us now from Cape Canaveral with more. And Gio, you've been there all day. What was the mood like before and after this launch was delayed?
You know what, Lindsay? When I drove into the Kennedy Space Center today, I remember seeing employees saying, "It's launch day, it's launch day, let's go, let's go." So quite the bummer, no doubt about it. In fact, take a look behind me right there. You still see that spaceship sitting right there on the launch pad. And the countdown clock, Lindsay, you were watching with me. Now it's completely off. So no doubt about it, people are bummed, but they are excited about a potential launch on Saturday.
Yeah, bummer is indeed the word. And what are the odds of a launch actually happening on Saturday?
Well, I've got to tell you, the forecast is not looking too good right now. Right now, NASA says that there's about a 40% chance of the weather being favorable for this launch to actually happen. If that doesn't work, they'll try again on Sunday. If that doesn't work, they'll try again on Tuesday. If that doesn't work, I guess you and I are going to be on TV all the time trying to get this spaceship.
You're going to be in Florida a long time. One of the astronauts who was in studio with us, she said on her first mission, it scrubbed 7 times over 30 days. So, Gio, get comfortable.
Incredible.
Thank you, Gio.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Lindsay.
When we come back, the daring rescue, the stranger who saw something and did something. President Trump attacking what could be his favorite social media platform. What could he actually do to Twitter after the company fact-checked his tweet about voter fraud? And the gut-wrenching brave choices people battling cancer have been forced to make during this pandemic. Stay with us.
Powerful stories of our time, anytime. Nightline.
Your mom said, comb your hair. Your dad told you, smarten up. Your dog is judging you right now. And your best friend just called you crazy. We all need someone who'll pull no punches and give it to us straight. Now imagine getting your news like that. No bull, no spin, just give it to me straight. Straightforward news, straight to the heart of the story. ABC News, straightforward.
The Americans here on the ground and the Iraqis, 18,000 tons. Patatas. Ismail? David.
David.
Over ground zero from Hurricane Michael. You can see just home after home. David, nice to meet you. This was your view.
My favorite view.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good morning, sunshine.
Good morning. Good morning. Oh, I'm grateful you woke up this morning.
Good morning, sunshine.
Good morning, sunshine. We've been waiting for you. Say good morning. Good morning, sunshine. In America. Say good morning. I want you to wake me up.
Right now, how do you make sense of it all? Now, afternoons on ABC, one place with the good information you need.
We are all in this together, and we're going to get through this together.
Pandemic, what you need to know. Afternoons at 1 Eastern, 12 Central and Pacific on ABC.
Welcome back. A stunning rescue caught on camera. A driver pulled to safety from a burning car by a Good Samaritan on the side of a Massachusetts highway. Footage shows this hero running across the interstate before pulling the man from the fiery wreck. The driver of the car and passenger were transported to a hospital for treatment. Currently, there is no update on their conditions. As we've reported here, this pandemic the past few months has upended health care in this country, forcing postponement of preventative care visits and elective surgeries and delaying critical organ transplants. And for the more than 15 million Americans living with cancer, deferred care and misdiagnoses can add up to precious lost time and gut-wrenching choices. Tonight, ABC's Devin Dwyer reports on the courage of facing cancer during COVID.
I'm just trying to make decisions to live my life as long as it lasts and not trying to lengthen my life with by decreasing its quality.
For Meredith Minister, this was supposed to be a summer of living it up and dancing away fears of metastatic cancer.
The way that I could exchange energy with other people on the dance floor, those are not things that you can approximate virtually.
The pandemic robbing her of a critical coping mechanism for a disease that has no cure.
People are dying alone in hospitals, and that's terrifying to me because it's not how I want to die.
You talk about that fear. How do you process that?
It's a very real fear, and you plan for it the best that you can. There's not a solution.
Millions of Americans with cancer are facing difficult choices about how to live fully in the era of social distancing and how much risk they're willing to take as the nation reopens.
It's frustrating that a lot of folks are jogging and strolling without masks. There are plenty with them, but it's a really weird feeling that people are dangerous.
Casey Peters of Denver is on edge about her compromised immune system from treatments for colon cancer.
I'm obsessed with thinking about the coronavirus. I'm obsessed with, am I going to get it? Is my family exposed? Are we doing things to stay safe?
Right now, we're mostly just watering a stick that we planted.
Casey was homeschooling her son and getting chemotherapy. In April, just as Colorado was supposed to peak from COVID, she made the difficult call to put off treatment.
I went into the hospital with a mask on, talked to the doctor, and he was like, how about we don't do your infusion today? I was like, what? And he gave me the choice. He goes, I'm 50-50. Do we want to make you even more immunocompromised? If in 5 or 10 years I have a resurgence of cancer, maybe it was because I didn't do that chemo.
Many describe an emotional dilemma: get treatment and risk COVID, or stay home and wonder about lost time.
It's a mental challenge for sure. You know, I've never been, over these past 2 years, I've never been what you want to call scared. I've been more or less anxious because I've taken this head on since day one, that this is not going to beat me. It doesn't define me.
Indiana firefighter Bruce DeArc, who has stage 4 colon cancer, had to postpone a trip to a top clinic in Texas this spring because of the lockdowns.
It's kind of funny to think that cancer patients, we kind of live in a pandemic daily, truthfully. If your immune system's compromised, every day you should have a mask, or you shouldn't go to stores where there's a lot of people, or there's just different things you have to watch. That this is the unseen enemy that you can't see. So it's kind of scary.
Breast cancer survivor Dawn Buckner of Oklahoma is feared most for her children. Her son has asthma and daughter cerebral palsy. Then last month, she got hit with COVID-19.
I called my husband. I was bawling, and I'm like, you've got to get, my son out of the bedroom, because you see the worst of it on TV and you think, oh my gosh, am I going to stop breathing here in a minute? I was pretty frantic the first day.
For weeks, Dawn has isolated herself at home, watching her son in a hammock outside her bedroom window.
Say hi, Tanner. Hi.
Praying her fragile immune system would handle the disease.
Don't you feel overwhelmed?
Yeah, I have cancer, but I can tell you right now, a whole list of people I know that are worse off.
Nearly 2 million Americans will be newly diagnosed with cancer this year. Over the last 3 decades, the number of new cases and deaths have both been steadily on the decline. But experts say the pandemic could reverse that trend and have a serious and disruptive effect on the search for a cure.
Screening and prevention and treatment are the pillars of medical care. And when you prolong that time, regardless of what the chronic disease we're talking about, the worse the outcomes are going to be.
For now, the pandemic giving many with cancer a reason for reflection.
We are thinking about how we want to live and how we want to live better and how we want to live with others better, which I think the pandemic, even more than cancer, is inviting us to think about right now is how we want to live with others.
It's an invitation to all of us, she says, to live in the moment.
It's those little victories of every day of just saying like, hey, I didn't die today. And hey, the world still exists outside my window.
And to keep a sense of humor.
The odds of a 33-year-old vegetarian female getting cancer, you look at all the risk factors and I'm the opposite. It's just a cruel joke somewhere and I might as well live it up and do that.
I don't believe this virus is going to go away per se. I think it's something we're going to be dealing with for a long time, I believe. It's the new normal.
Bruce DeArc says that new normal requires perseverance.
I've got 2 daughters, a 21-year-old and a 16-year-old, and I definitely want to see them graduate college and have kids someday, not for a while, hopefully, but want to see that, and I plan on doing that. So I will fight this tooth and nail all the way.
And for Dawn Buckner, battling COVID and breast cancer, it takes daily acts of courage. Last week, she drove 2 hours by herself to get retested for the all clear.
What will it mean if this test comes back and you're negative?
It will mean that I'll have to have one more negative test in order to even have surgery on June the 8th. For now, for today, it would mean I can, go around my family, go make dinner, go play with the kids.
And tonight, Dawn's celebrating her results, negative for COVID-19. One fight done, another still ahead, but reunited with daughter and son over snow cones and big smiles. Devin Dwyer, ABC News, Washington.
Snow cones all around to celebrate that good news, and our thanks to Devin for that. We still have much more to report out here on ABC News Prime. The new surveillance clues in the manhunt for a fugitive college student wanted for 2 deaths. And some news from our parent company Disney on the plans to reopen the happiest place on earth. But first, our tweet of the day. LeBron James explaining in pictures why he thinks some athletes in the NFL took a knee.
In times like these, the news-making events happen here. ABC News.
President Trump meeting face-to-face with one of the world's most brutal dictators, Kim Jong-un.
The president.
Do you trust him? I do trust him, yeah. I think he trusts me, and I trust him.
Ivanka Trump.
I have to ask you about your emails. Your father had taken Hillary Clinton to task for this.
There just is no equivalency.
So the idea of lock her up doesn't apply to you?
No.
Comey.
How strange is it for you to sit here and compare the president to a mob boss?
Very strange.
Michelle Obama.
What do you wish you could tell your pre-White House self?
Melania Trump.
Do you think there's still people there that he can't trust?
Yes.
Still working now?
Yes.
Michael Cohen.
So he's still lying?
Yes.
It's a big statement.
And now, in a year with so much on the line, we're right there.
Good evening tonight from Washington, a very busy news night.
America's #1 news source, ABC News, straightforward.
We all need someone who'll pull no punches and give it to us straight. No bull, no spin. Now, imagine getting your news like that. Just give it to me straight. ABC News, straightforward.
Another week in America, a country facing a new test now.
The Wuhan airport, almost no one here.
The last flight out of Rome.
This is the nursing home just outside Seattle.
Dozens of people were just rushed off this cruise ship.
This is ground zero.
It is shut down.
Another ambulance just pulled out.
Now they're headed to the hospital.
Time is of the essence.
You can see the ship behind me.
This is the first time tests have been done here.
Morning, afternoon, evening, late night, 24/7. ABC News. There for you.
What's the most innovative daily news podcast out there to listen to every day? Well, the Edward R. Murrow Awards say it's Start Here, the daily news podcast from ABC News. Even the New York Times calls us a top news podcast worth listening to. Start Here, free on Apple Podcasts.
Now, with so much on the line, ABC News, America's #1 news, is right there for you live on Hulu with stories of strength, stories of hope. Because now, when it matters most,
Hulu has live news.
Hulu has live news.
Hulu has live news, and that news is ABC News.
ABC News Live on Hulu.
ABC News Live on Hulu.
watch the news you need.
Thanks so much for streaming with us.
Streaming to all Hulu subscribers right now.
You're going to see a lot less density than you normally might see at a Disney park. But what's also going to happen is you're going to have an environment where not everybody can be accommodated like they normally could. So it's going to take some patience, I think, on the side of our guests and some understanding that we're going to do the best that we can under the constraints that we're under to open up again. Because in order to go to full speed, you got to start somewhere. And we're going to start from the beginning, and we're going to be very responsible in doing that.
That was Disney CEO Bob Chapek discussing plans for a phased reopening of some of Disney World's parks in Florida this summer, which have been closed since March due to the pandemic. So let's take a look by the numbers. In just over 6 weeks, on July 11th, Disney will reopen the Magic Kingdom and Animal Kingdom in Orlando with reduced capacity and a new advanced reservation system for guests to enter. One industry group estimated more than 20 million visitors to the Magic Kingdom in 2018. So one silver lining of the gradual reopening, smaller crowds are likely going to mean shorter wait times for rides. 6 feet of social distancing will be in effect throughout Disney World, so don't expect the hugs from Sleeping Beauty or Cinderella or those iconic parades right away. Other safety measures include employees and guests wearing masks, temperature checks at the entrance gates as well. After closing in January, Disney reopened its theme park in Shanghai, China 2 weeks ago with similar measures at 30% capacity. Advanced reservations sold out in minutes for the reopening. Other theme parks in Florida will also begin opening their doors soon. SeaWorld Orlando, which saw an estimated 5 million visitors in 2018, will begin reopening on June 11th. Disney is also in ongoing talks with the NBA to try to finish the 2020 NBA season at Disney's sports complex in Orlando. And we note that Disney is the parent company of ABC. When we return, can President Trump actually take action against Twitter and other social media platforms? And speaking out, a former athlete fighting for his life on his regrets for not telling anyone sooner about the sexual assault he says he suffered. But first, here's some of the trending stories on abcnews.com.
What you're seeing right now, this is part of the eye wall. This procession of migrants goes back 2 miles.
There is going to be catastrophic damage.
This fire has made a run. You can see those flames shooting up into the sky.
We are on the jam-packed red carpet.
To the right, guys.
So this is the 4th weekend of protest.
Watch ABC News on location for Facebook Watch.
What's the most innovative daily news podcast out there to listen to every day? Well, the Edward R. Murrow Awards say it's Start Here, the daily news podcast from ABC News. Even the New York Times calls us a top news podcast worth listening to. So if you like getting behind the biggest news stories of the day, inside all the details, the backstory, and what will happen next, then listen to Start Here, the daily news podcast from ABC News. It's like no other news podcast out there. Even the critics agree. Listen free on Apple Podcasts.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live, the 24/7 streaming news source from ABC News. Breaking news, live events, streaming nonstop. Original breakthrough storytelling from ABC News, National Geographic, ESPN, and it's all designed differently for you to stream straight to any screen whenever you want.
ABC News Live.
Streaming everywhere, right to you.
ABC News Live. It's that easy to go there.
The Americans here on the ground and the Iraqis. 18,000 tons. Patatas. Ismail? David.
For Ground Zero from Hurricane Michael.
You can see just home after home. David, nice to meet you. This was your view.
My favorite view.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
The U.S. hitting another grim milestone in the coronavirus pandemic. Johns Hopkins University now reporting more than 100,000 deaths in the U.S. from COVID-19.
As states begin to slowly reopen, New York, once the epicenter of the country, is now phasing in lifting of restrictions in all regions except New York City.
Masked and waving to cameras, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo walked into the White House today. His meeting with President Trump coming as the hardest hit state is seeing its lowest number of coronavirus cases since the pandemic started. But now he's trying to figure out how to reopen New York City and pay for the cost of combating COVID.
And there cannot be a national recovery if the state and local governments are not funded. That is a fact.
Across the country, similar stories. Colorado is allowing in-person dining. Retail stores reopened in LA. Washington, D.C. will allow barbershops and salons to open Friday. Signs of promise. ABC studied the 21 states that eased restrictions 3 weeks ago. None have reported major increases in COVID cases or deaths.
A man matching the description of Peter Manfredonia, a fugitive University of Connecticut student wanted in the killings of 2 people, was seen in northeastern Pennsylvania. But a search overnight near the town of East Stroudsburg came up empty.
Picture shows Manfredonia in East Stroudsburg walking along some railroad tracks on Sunday when he was first seen in Pennsylvania. He is carrying a duffel bag, and investigators believe inside there are guns he stole during a home invasion in Connecticut.
He could hide in these woods forever.
In Europe, the European Union announced an $800 billion COVID rescue deal, and Italy, one of the hardest hit countries, could benefit the most. If approved, the government funds would include relief aid for businesses to stay afloat. A family's hike in the Italian Alps nearly turned tragic.
Don't turn your back on him. He's minding his own business. The Italian stepfather told 12-year-old Alessandro. That's as a massive brown bear slowly followed the boy down a slope in Italy's Alps. After several terrifying minutes of the bear standing on its hind legs as it trailed the boy, it finally headed away down the mountain in a different direction. The encounter between the brown bear and the boy was taped by his stepfather and went viral here in Italy. Alessandro, a wildlife enthusiast from the area, called the encounter the most thrilling day of his life.
I'm still frozen with fear at the sight of that brown bear. We turn now to the White House, where the president today has been in a showdown with Twitter after his favorite social media outlet put fact-checking warnings on some of his tweets. The president now is warning, quote, big action against Twitter, but what can he actually do? ABC News Chief White House correspondent Jonathan Karl has the latest.
President Trump is now threatening to shut down the social media platform that helped fuel his rise to the presidency.
Mr. President, what are you planning to do with Twitter?
The threat came this morning on, where else? Twitter. The president accusing major social media platforms of treating conservatives unfairly and even messing with the upcoming 2020 election, tweeting, "We will strongly regulate or close them down." He later added, big action to follow. This after Twitter took the extraordinary step of putting a fact-check warning on 2 of the president's tweets, both of them about voting by mail. In one, the president tweeted, "There is no way, zero, that mail-in ballots will be anything less than substantially fraudulent." Twitter put a bright blue warning below the tweets, which linked to articles debunking the president's claims. The president himself has frequently voted by mail. White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany defended him for doing so.
He supports mail-in voting for a reason, when you have a reason that you are unable to be present.
Today, the Tampa Bay Times reported McEnany herself has voted absentee by mail 11 times over the past 10 years. McEnany responded saying absentee voting has the word absent in it for a reason. It means you're absent from the jurisdiction or unable to vote in person. But there's a reason many states are now ramping up vote by mail. The threat of a second wave of COVID-19 could make it dangerous, even deadly, for many to vote in person.
Jonathan Karl joins us now. So the president says that he can take big action against Twitter. Has he or the White House said what that might mean?
Well, he said that he would possibly shut Twitter down, shut these social media networks down. But, Lindsay, it is far from clear the president has any authority to do that. Now they are saying that he will sign some kind of an executive order tomorrow. But again, what authority he would have to do anything like shutting Twitter down? And would he even do that? I mean, this is somebody who has more than 80 million Twitter followers who he loves to communicate with, and in fact, who he has been communicating with today, even after making these threats. He has been tweeting and tweeting quite frequently. So we don't have any idea what the president will do tomorrow, but I think it's a safe bet it will fall far short of any effort to actually shut down Twitter.
Right, because he does seem to love his tweets. Now, another debate is whether Twitter should take down President Trump's unfounded attacks against MSNBC anchor Joe Scarborough, suggesting that he actually committed murder decades ago. How is the White House defending these statements?
Well, the defenses, frankly, have been a little pathetic. They haven't, they don't actually defend the substance of it. Instead, what Kayleigh McEnany, the White House press secretary, has said is that the president is not the first person to make this allegation, this outrageous allegation that is without any evidence. As for Twitter taking down that, Twitter has this policy that they don't take down the tweets of world leaders. There have been a couple of exceptions to that, but the idea is that those tweets themselves, even if they are outrageously wrong, do have news value because of who sent them out. So Twitter is saying that they are reviewing that policy as well. So we'll see if anything happens with those Joe Scarborough tweets. But the president was at it again today, tweeting more about Joe Scarborough.
All right, Jonathan Karl in Washington, D.C. for us. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Lindsay.
For more on this issue, let's bring in ABC News Chief Legal Analyst Dan Abrams. Thanks so much for joining us, Dan.
Hey, Lindsay.
So let's start with Trump's threat to regulate or close down social media companies. Does he have any authority to do that?
Well, I certainly think when it comes to shutting them down, he doesn't. When it comes to regulation, he can try, but it would be difficult as a legal matter to figure out exactly what authority he has. Now, if Congress wanted to join him in the effort, that would be a different story. There is a specific regulation on the books called Section 230, which specifically deals with places like Twitter, Facebook, with regard to what the rules ought to be, what they are, what liability they have. If Congress wanted to join the president in making changes in that law, that could happen. But the president alone would have to rely on the FCC or the FTC, meaning the Federal Trade Commission, that usually deals with unfair practices. And it wouldn't be an easy road and likely would be deemed unconstitutional if he went too far.
So social media companies like Twitter and Facebook have chosen to fact check or take down some posts that they say are false. Are they required by law to do this? And if they do fact check some posts, doesn't that mean that they maybe should fact check everything that's posted to their platforms to make sure that they're not biased?
Right. So let's separate out the legal question from the practical and PR question. The legal answer to that is no. They don't have to fact check. But certainly they're allowed to put the fact-checking badge that they are putting on there. The second question of once they start down that road, do they then have to fact-check everyone? Well, that's not as much a legal question as a practical one, meaning that if they do start fact-checking the president or more Republicans, for example, they may have to answer questions to their community of people who use their product to say, wait a sec, here's why we're doing it, here's why we're not, et cetera. And it may be more difficult to explain if they're only selectively fact-checking. But as a legal matter, it probably doesn't have an impact unless they start literally becoming a publisher as opposed to a forum. If they really started getting into the business of putting out content and regularly talking, engaging with the content that was on there, that would be a different story, but they're not there yet, and I can assure you they don't want to go there.
And that point you just made is one that Senator Marco Rubio made, saying that social media companies like Twitter aren't liable for false information on users' posts on their sites because they're considered forums and not publishers of information. Rubio argued that once they play an editorial role, these companies should lose those legal protections. Does he have a point?
Well, he has a point if they move too far towards serving an editorial role, but that's not what we're talking about here. Also, let's point out that this week, the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals ruled on a very similar question here about what power Twitter has to ban someone. And a very conservative commentator challenged a decision that Twitter had made and lost in the D.C. Circuit in a unanimous opinion. So that's not good news for the president and others who want to say, we ought to be able to regulate this. We have to be able to regulate this, because if this ends up in court, it is likely a losing argument for the president. If they go beyond just minor issues like saying, we'll create a place where people can file complaints and things like that, and literally get into the business of starting to say what content they can or can't publish.
Well, Twitter in the past has been reluctant to fact-check or censor the posts of world leaders, including President Trump. I mean, he's been in office several years now. Why make the distinction at this point and change course now?
Well, look, it seems Twitter has changed its policy more broadly. And the key for them in maintaining credibility is that they have to apply it across the board. And that's not just politically, but it means you can't just target the highest profile people. That if you're going to have this policy in place, you're going to have to apply it to Twitter users in general with regard to fact-checking. And it is interesting in this particular case to see why they decided on this comment about mail-in voting, as opposed to some other comments that the president has made that some could argue even needed a fact check more so than this particular allegation. Without making a judgment on how much this one needed or didn't, it's interesting that this was the one that for Twitter crossed the line.
Dan Abrams, thank you so much for your insight as always.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Rising tensions in Hong Kong amid growing protests over Chinese control. Today, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo certified to Congress that Hong Kong no longer has autonomy from China and will no longer receive special treatment under U.S. laws. That basically means that Hong Kong's special economic status, especially when it comes to trade, that's now in jeopardy. China's parliament is expected to vote on stricter national security laws for Hong Kong later on this week. And a passing to note tonight, Larry Kramer, the influential playwright and AIDS activist, has died. Kramer, who authored The Normal Heart, spoke out passionately about the AIDS epidemic at a time when it was largely being ignored. His work pushed the country to recognize AIDS as a public health emergency, and he inspired generations of gay Americans to use their voice and their art to bring about change. Kramer was 84. Now to a story about a college athlete who thought he was getting a routine exam by the team's doctor. Instead, he came to realize that he and potentially hundreds of other players had been allegedly abused. Chuck Christian played football at the University of Michigan in the 70s, but those experiences with the team's doctor haunted him for years, keeping him, he says, from seeking treatment for a now life-threatening disease. He's using his heartbreaking story to warn others from doing the same. Our Will Carr reports.
I'm not always in pain, but, you know, some days are better than others, and today was not one of my best days. Because for the last couple of days, I've been hurting. But I try not to worry my wife about it. So I kind of try to keep it down.
For 4 decades, Chuck Christian, a strong athlete and creative artist, never considered himself a victim.
Sometimes I kind of blame myself because I wish I had been tough enough to just still go see my doctor instead of letting Anderson affect me the way he did.
Anderson, who he's referring to, is Robert Anderson. For 35 years, Anderson served as the staff doctor for several teams at the University of Michigan, where Chuck Christian played tight end in the 1970s. At the time, Christian was concentrating on football and art.
How did you get interested in being an artist? I've been doing it since I was 2.
He did not give much thought to the annual physical required by the team until he says Anderson told him to drop his shorts and bend over, allegedly inserting his finger into Christian's rectum.
And it hurt like crazy. And I just started screaming, and he's like, "You feel pressure, right? This pressure." I said, "No, I feel pain."
When Christian asked some of his teammates about the exam, everyone said they'd also been penetrated.
I asked some of the upperclassmen, I said, Dr. Anderson did this to me. And he said, "Oh yeah, you just be prepared. He's gonna do that to you for 4 years." I'm like, "Really?" And then that was it. So then I guess I kind of figured that it was normal.
Christian says the torment lasted all 4 years, leading him to develop a fear of doctors.
When I was 45, I started having blood in my urine. So I went in to see a doctor, a urologist at 45. And at that point, he said that he wanted to do a digital exam. So he went over into that corner and put on a glove and snapped it. And as soon as he snapped it, my brain just went right back to Dr. Anderson's office. And I knew what was coming next. And when I realized what was coming next, I told my doctor, I said, "No, I can't do it."
Christian passed on the exam. Now he's 60 and has stage 4 prostate cancer. More than 100 former athletes have stepped forward accusing Anderson, who died in 2008, of sexual assault by unnecessary anal penetration and excessive genital fondling, according to court documents. The University of Michigan has launched an independent investigation.
I'm still around for a reason. This needs to get out. People need to know, and some corrections need to be made.
Sadly, Chuck's cancer has spread, and he may not even be here to see the results of Michigan's independent investigation. At this point, there are more than 300 unique complaints. One former athlete says that he had more prostate exams in college than he's had as an adult. And keep in mind that adult men don't even need a prostate exam until they're 45, and that's only if they're high risk, according to doctors. Now, we reached out to Michigan for comment. They say that they are sorry if any of their students went through pain, and they have nothing but admiration for the former athletes like Chuck who are stepping forward. Lindsay.
Our thanks to Chuck Christian for telling his story or sharing his story, and our thanks to you, Will, for sharing it, and also to our friends at ESPN for that as well. We'll be right back.
Right now, how do you make sense of it all? Now, afternoons on ABC, one place with the good information you need.
We are all in this together, and we're going to get through this together.
Pandemic, what you need to know. Afternoons at 1 Eastern, 12 Central and Pacific on ABC. Friday nights, 9/8 Central. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True crime, 2020. Friday nights, 9/8 Central on ABC.
The world may feel out of your control, but your happiness doesn't have to be. Learn the secrets to happiness. Listen to the 10% Happier podcast, free on Apple Podcasts.
ABC News honored winner of 4 Edward R. Murrow Awards, including the most prestigious honor, Overall Excellence in Television. ABC News, America's #1 news choice.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live, the 24/7 streaming news source from ABC News. Breaking news, live events, events, streaming nonstop. Original breakthrough storytelling from ABC News, National Geographic, ESPN, and it's all designed differently for you to stream straight to any screen whenever you want.
ABC News Live.
Streaming everywhere, right to you.
ABC News Live. It's that easy to go there.
Good morning, sunshine.
Good morning. Good morning. Oh, I'm grateful you woke up this morning.
Good morning, sunshine.
Good morning, sunshine. We've been waiting for you. Say good morning. Good morning, sunshine. America. Say good morning. I want you to wake me up.
ABC News, America's #1 news source. Straightforward news, straight to the heart of the story. ABC News, straightforward.
And before we go tonight, the image of the day. Take a look. These are the astronauts from today's planned SpaceX launch, trying to kind of socially distance hug with their families before getting on board. The next attempted launch is on Saturday, and virtual hugs all around for everyone. That is our show for this hour. Stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us, and good night.